Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to, depending on wherever you may live or however you choose to read your clock, this early morning, middle of the night bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this early morning or middle of the night bonus upload. Shall we? Today's first encounter. So let me start with the fact that I didn't see what did this to me. I heard, felt, and feared for my life. It's taken years of me reliving this, trying to clarify with myself that this even really happened. It did happen. Truth is, I've been in shock. I'm used to stressful situations and being intimidating myself. I had never truly known what fear was. At the time I was in the military, it was summertime in a tribal part of Washington state. Our home didn't have air conditioning, so at night we slept with the windows open. I was in the middle of my marriage going really bad, and honestly I was stressed out and sad. I was stuck in a one-bedroom house that had 2 windows in the kitchen, 1 sliding glass door in the living room, 1 window in the bedroom, and 1 in the bathroom. Most of the nights we slept with just the bathroom window open and the bedroom. It let the air move over the bedroom and felt great. The downside was I'd hear the rats, which, being close to the port, they were big. I'd hear the homeless rummaging through garbage, raccoons hissing, or dogs fighting cats. So I got pretty used to the noise and didn't really give it much thought. Well, myself and my wife at the time were watching TV. It was dark outside, and I heard a cat and a dog fighting. Normally this took place in a large alley between my home, so I paid it no thought. What weirded me out was they moved the fight into the small space between the home and right aside of the neighbor's fence. The space is about 18 feet long and about a foot wide. I was using it to store my canoe. There really was not a lot of space for a fight. Well, it just didn't sound natural. The dog sounded like maybe it was in heat with the cat. So I shut the windows. It was kind of a cooler night, so I just didn't want to be bothered. When the whole house started to shake, something big started to slam into the house between 1 foot space and the window. I had blinds on all the windows, so I couldn't exactly see what was going on, but I knew something wasn't right. The growling, the angry hissing, the screams, almost like a man piercing my ears and my heart. I didn't know what I was hearing at the time, but I knew I needed to act. My wife was freaking out as well, seeing she's Mexican, and started saying crap in Spanish. I grabbed the shotgun, started to load it. I handed it to my wife. I grabbed my pistol and a flashlight. Went to peek out the window. This thing, from what I've read and gathered, it smells fear. It knows what you think. It's fast, strong. As soon as I peeked out, it must have leapt because it was already at my sliding glass door. It was testing the door. I thought maybe it was a large, bloodthirsty, rabid dog. No, something was wrong. Dogs don't test locks. This house was tiny, and so the way we had the house set up, especially with homeless break-ins in the neighborhood at the time, we had already decided to keep the living room blind shut. and to put the couch in front of the sliding glass door with a wedge. Well, this thing was really upset that the door was locked and started literally ramming the door. I'm crapping my pants. This thing is literally trying to break down my door. The whole house is shaking. So we take a defensive position, waiting for the door to come down. I peek over to the kitchen door, front door, and to the deadbolt. It's locked. I hear a frustrated rumble, and I let out a war cry because, you know what, MFer, I don't know what you are, but I'm going to pump you full of lead. I was really upset at this point. It wasn't breaking in. This wasn't going to scare me. This thing wanted blood. I could feel it in my head. It was evil. It was unnatural. It literally jumped on our roof. My heart exploded. This thing was jumping from on my roof, looking for a weakness in the shingles. I don't know. But it proved to me that this thing is agile, faster than me. My best chance at survival was to try and shoot my way out, and I wasn't going to outrun it. Since this thing was on the roof, I took a second and told my wife. I didn't know what was going to happen, but we didn't have time to call the cops. The expected response time for the police in my area was 30 to 60 minutes. I told her we were going to have to survive until this thing left because we could not be prepared. When the front door / kitchen started jingling, this thing's intelligent. It waited for me to semi-distract while talking to her, to quietly get off the roof and try to find a weak point. I told her to point at the door, and I went into the kitchen window and started trying to beat on the door again. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen block and pointed the pistol at the door. The house is shaking, and it really didn't feel like the door was going to hold to this kind of abuse that much longer. It stopped. Like a dense fog that lifts, it's gone. I grabbed my flashlight and started looking out the windows, the doors, for like 2 minutes. I took a big breath, told my wife to stay inside, keep the shotgun pointed at the door. I wanted to find a scrap of evidence of what just happened. I poked outside, and sure enough, my neighbor was standing outside with their Glock. The dialogue basically went to the effect of, "What was all the noise? Are you okay?" I explained to him what I thought I had heard and saw, because now I'm going into shock. Did that all really happen? He said he heard a dog outside and someone beating on my house. He said he didn't see anything. The lot was really badly lit. I told him it was unreal, and if it was anything, it had to have been a dog, a big one, maybe a bear. So we looked for tracks. I even told him how at first it sounded like a cat fighting, and then I told him how it got onto our roof. I got a weird look from that part. Well, there was no blood, no marks, no footprints. The grass didn't even have impressions like someone walked through them. The ground was pretty wet, so it was muddy. I remember feeling shock and scared after, and feeling really tired after the adrenaline wore off. I literally asked my wife if it was real. She said she thought it was. I think she felt the same way I did. She said chupacabra, but I thought it was a demon. I faintly remember a sulfur smell like eggs. Years later, I stumbled across a similar story where someone mentioned some kind of crawler or skinwalker or something. It made my skin crawl. I got goosebumps. Honestly, guys, there's crap out there that no one knows. There's things I never want to know. The worst part is, if it was one of those evil demons, my guns were useless, and this thing knew it. The other thing that made it all the more real to me, that I didn't realize at the time that it happened, we were on native land. Today's second encounter. In early April, my dad and I decided to ride dirt bikes in Irwin, Tennessee. We parked at my aunt's house, a mile or so from the location, Rock Creek Mountain Trails. We took off earlier in the day at around 11 or so, and took off with no problems. We had fun shooting around turns and speeding through the woods. We went all over the side and top of the mountain. Since it was COVID, All the parks were closed, and this was no exception, so we were wary of park rangers and service, so we kept a close eye out for them. At any rate, while riding dirt bikes, they were in check, full working order, so it was odd when we decided to drop off the back of the mountain into a small flat where my dad used to camp and ride with his friends. As soon as we started descending off the mountain into the flat, my bike started to act up. My bike's a 250 with no kickstart, just an electric start. So we stopped for a minute to look at everything and see if maybe something was stuck in the chain, but it was fine. So we started the bike and started our descent further into the woods. We journeyed maybe a quarter of a mile into the flat. As soon as we passed another hairpin turn into the flat, my dad stopped to talk about where he and his friends used to camp and the crazy things that happened. He got done talking, and we decided to head deeper into the woods. My dad started his bike and took off, leaving me in the turn. I flipped the key on and off switch, tried to start it, and nothing. I fiddled with it for a few more minutes trying to start it, flipping the key on and off. Still nothing. I yelled for my dad and kept trying the key. By the grace of God, he noticed that I was taking too long, and he came back. I kept trying while he came from the opposite direction, and still nothing. As soon as my dad came for help, it decided to turn on. I thought maybe the battery cable came loose, and I'll tighten it when we get home. We took off down the trail with no problems. We had made it to the part of the trail that continued on, but a tree had fallen over and there was no chance of moving it, so we turned around. This is when things get odd. My dad took off again, and I started up no problem and took off too. My dad was further ahead of me, so I tried to catch up with him. This trail is very rocky, curvy. Visibility is not so good. On one of the curves, I saw my dad, but he wasn't on his bike. He was standing in the woods 5 or so feet beside the trail. I slowed down because I thought maybe he had stopped. I saw his helmet and orange shirt that he was wearing, and I kicked down first and pulled my clutch. I saw him waving to me, ushering me to him. As soon as I did, I heard his bike in the distance, the scream of the two-stroke. At that moment, I kicked my bike into gear, and as I heard a sound, I hauled ass. I took off to catch up to my dad in the hairpin. I turned around to see this thing crawling after me. I went even faster until I couldn't see it. I got halfway to where the turn was, and my dad was pulled off the side of the road. I looked back and couldn't see it. I pulled beside my dad, turned my bike off, and told him what I had just seen. He was creeped out, to say the least. My dad's a big guy, 6'5", and doesn't scare easy. But he thought it may have been a ranger or something. I didn't care. I just wanted to keep riding and go to a different place. I tried starting my bike, but nothing. I did the routine I had pulled earlier, and still nothing. The whole situation was disturbing, and I just wanted to leave. I prayed a little, and a few seconds later, my bike cut on. We pulled out of there, going fairly fast to another location. After we had left that area, my bike had no more problems. Every time I pressed the start button, it sparked to life. The rest of the ride was anticlimactic. We just rode and had fun enjoying the day. We left at 2 or so and went back to my aunt's. We cleaned my bike and then took the seat off to inspect the battery cable to see if it was loose. I took the plastics off to the side of the battery. Everything was fine. I'm not sure what I saw crawling after me, and I'm not sure why it looked like my dad. My guess is it was trying to lure me into the woods for some malicious reason. I'll never be sure. All I know is I didn't want to see this thing ever again. I'd rather just ride my bike in peace. Today's third experience. A few summers ago, my family decided to go vacation in a quaint mountain village in Alberta, Canada called Banff. The first couple of days were spent in town visiting museums, shopping. One morning, we went to breakfast at a diner that had different articles hanging on the walls. Intrigued, I took a closer look. Most of the articles were about the town's history, which was kind of boring. but one of them stood out to me. It was a story about how a pack of gigantic bear ran from out of the mountain through the town without any actual reason. They didn't attack anyone. They didn't even really look at anyone. They just ran. When we were seated, my dad began to ask our waitress questions about the article. But, she said, just push it off. The event happened long ago. The next day, we packed our rental car to visit the Banff National Park. It's a hiking trail that leads through the mountain. On our way there, a pack of elk strolled through the forest and out in front of our car. Doesn't really relate to the story, but it was cool, so I figured I'd share it. Anyway, we're driving through the middle of nowhere on a steep mountain road when we spotted a park ranger squatted down, glaring into the trees. We stopped the car. My dad rolled the window down and asked what was going on. The ranger informed us that there was an injured female grizzly bear spotted there about an hour ago. He told us that one of her babies was found skinned and half-eaten about a mile away. They knew the baby was hers because they either had painted a streak on the fur or placed in a tracker, and I forget. After having a short talk with the ranger, who refused to tell us anything else, we arrived at the trail. Before entering, my dad gave us the lecture on mountain safety. He made it really clear to always be with somebody and not to stray from the path. Because of my rebellious and not-so-smart stage, I broke both rules. I was really starting to feel dizzy and nauseous from walking so long, so my parents told my brother to stay with me on the bench while they finished the trail. Above the bench we were sitting at, there's a few gigantic rocks that lead up to a higher level in the mountain. I asked my brother if he wanted to climb the rocks and explore the other level, but of course he said no. I told him that I just wanted to climb up quickly and see what it looked like. Then I'd come down. He gave me permission to go by myself. When I reached the top, it was mostly forest. There was no light except for two small dots that I could barely see in the distance. My stomach dropped as I squinted my eyes at the dots. These were no dots, they were eyes. The body that they were attached to made me want to cry. The head resembled an elongated wolf face. The body looked like nothing I had ever seen before. It looked like 10-foot tall, malnourished wolf, except for its arms, which almost looked human. Almost. The entire creature was black and gray. The thing began slowly coming towards me. I was too scared to speak or move, so I just fell to my knees and tried to look past the creature. As soon as I changed position, the creature made a strange clicking noise and dashed away. Apparently, I fainted from dizziness of walking for hours on top of the terror. Whenever my family asks what happened up there, I pretend like I forgot. They'd never believe me anyway. I had researched the area on what I saw, but I can't find much. I couldn't even find the article in the diner. I have no idea what I saw that night, but I can bet you anything that was the thing that skinned that baby grizzly and scared the bears out of the mountain. I'd run like hell too if I ever saw that thing again. Really quick, I've had probably 6 different encounters out of Banff as well that I've narrated. And it is a really creepy location. I really enjoy to Google satellite every location that I've narrated. And Banff is pretty freaky, if you ask me. I don't know if it's just Banff or if it's all national parks, but anyway, moving on. Today's 4th encounter. Last year I was living in a small mountain town in central southern Colorado in the Rio Grande National Forest. Super small town. Ute natives were tragically killed in the whole area of the town. I don't usually get creepy vibes when I'm there, but it's definitely weird in many ways. I was in my car at 2 a.m. with a friend. We had parked outside of the house and were looking down the road with only the streetlight across the street lighting up the area. From 15 yards in front of us, we see this large animal emerge from the darkness and catch the light. We started asking each other what it was. It was like the size of a small horse or a big deer. It's walking toward us and stands 1 yard away from my door. We're frozen, unable to move while we stare at it move closer to us. I say, "Is that a wolf?" It's all I could think it could be. Tall, completely silver, looked like a wolf from a movie. As it stands so close to us, it keeps looking up at the sky, from the left to the right. Then it runs away towards the large cliffs at the back of the town, where the abandoned mines are and the large forest begins. We're stunned, frozen, silent for minutes, till we started laughing, eventually calmed down and went inside, confused. After that, I told some of my coworkers, thinking how cool it was that I saw a wolf. They all said it was impossible. There's been no wolves here for decades. So I researched, and guess what? They're right. No wolves have been here for like 40 years. It'd be a miracle if I had seen one, especially a gray wolf. As I looked at more pictures of wolves, my memory became more clear. What I saw was too tall and too silver to be a gray wolf. My friend and I have not forgotten one detail of this. I'm sure it was not a dog. If it was, that's the biggest dog in existence. I remember the world washing away as I stared at its shiny fur. It was the most majestic creature I'd ever seen. There were chills covering my body, and I could barely breathe. Today's fifth encounter. So, this is an experience I have told very few people due to it scaring me half to death. But it's coming up on a year since it happened, so I figured I might as well share it. I was out west last year at around October, early November for a backpacking and hiking trip. Suffice to say, I needed to clear my head, and this was part of a 2-month sabbatical I took from home. During this time, I lived primarily out of my car on the East Coast. For the portion of my hiatus related to this story, I ventured to Utah. I spent 8 days total, seeing all 5 national parks and generally having a fantastic time. I would certainly recommend to anyone to visit all of those places. The thing I would not recommend, however, is to do what I did and go alone. I was gambling with a lot of different dangers in that I traveled by myself and both backpacked and camped by myself in some less than safe places. I was at a very low point in my life and struggling with depression. I felt very little reason to go on or care for myself at all, so I made decisions most rational people probably wouldn't make due to lack of safety. The night of my encounter, I guess we should call it, I was on my way to Zion, to the north rim of the Grand Canyon. This was early in my trip, and I had yet to see any stars in the desert. I'm from the East Coast, and there's too much light pollution from where I'm from to get a good look at the Milky Way. I left Zion about right before sunset, and by the time I had crossed into Arizona, the sky was full of stars like I had never seen before in my life. I pulled over on the shoulder. I imagine they're made for truckers to rest, as this 2-lane highway had no shoulder exits apart from random sections I'd come across, and just took it all in for 15 minutes before driving on. Now, the North Rim is 3 hours and some change from where I was, somewhere along route. I was messing with my music, and I managed to screw up my directions in a spot without great service. When I finally got it back, I clicked the first Grand Canyon option that came up, figuring it would choose whatever was closest. That was my biggest mistake. I went up Kebab Forest and past the turn I needed to take to get onto the North Rim without ever knowing it. I came down the road and into the desert once again, passing one small town before hanging a right into the nothingness of the desert before me. I had so much on my mind and had zoned out a bit while driving that I didn't realize how long I had been on this trip. Eventually it hit me. I should have been to the North Rim by now. Turns out I had gone about 60 miles into the desert before realizing my blunder. During this time, I saw less than 5 cars. Miraculously, I had service and got the right route. Thankfully, no one was waiting for me or traveling with me, so I didn't consider it much a terrible mistake beyond lost sleep and the price of gas. So I thought, oh well, at least while I'm out here, I might as well have another look at the stars. This is where it begins. I pulled off in another one of those shoulders after turning around and got out. I don't really even remember looking up because I stepped out into what I can only describe as a presence. It felt like a mixture of things. I felt watched, as though I was being stared at intently and viciously. I felt hated. This is the only way I can describe it. Whatever was staring at me deeply desired to harm me, and I could feel it shooting down my spine just seconds after I had stepped out of the car. Never in my life have I ever felt anything like that, and I hope never to. I'll never forget the sensation of getting out of my car. I had an instinctual feeling that I needed to get back into the car as quickly as possible and drive immediately. It was like an alarm in my head, repeating over and over, get back into your car and drive. Every second I stood out there was heightened. I wasn't out of my car for more than 25 seconds, and even that seemed like an eternity. I floored it out of there, expecting to feel better. Quite quickly, I did not. I now felt another feeling I had never experienced, and hoped never to. I was being chased. Even as I type this out, it still seems crazy and unbelievable to me, and I still try to rationalize it that I psyched myself out. But I remained steadfast and convinced. I was going upwards to 85 miles an hour, and I would swear on my life that something was behind me, even at that speed. Paranoid, I kept tapping the brake lights to see if I could make anything out, but I couldn't. This dreadful feeling persisted until I saw a town that I had passed earlier, some 50 miles away. I didn't feel completely safe again until I was into the forest. Now I'm aware that far in the desert there's going to be wildlife around me, but remember, I didn't care a whole lot, and I know full well there's not an animal that wants to be near me any more than I want to be near it, so I generally wasn't worried about that. Whatever this was, I firmly believe was not an animal. I know that Arizona, Utah is a strange part of the country, full of strange stories, encounters, conspiracies involving the government cover-ups and experiments, so I'm not sure exactly what to chalk it up to. I did do some research after that, and the best I can figure, I may have come across something similar to a skinwalker. I'll also say that I did venture out of the car several more times at night to see the stars while driving through Utah, and not once did I experience anything like that again. While I'm a man of faith, and I generally don't believe in a lot of urban legends, I do believe there is demonic activity and/or inexplicable amount of stories and encounters to me, simply to say that there's nothing there. I was vaguely aware of some of these legends before my trip, but didn't pay a whole lot of attention to them. After the certainty that I felt that night, I can definitely tell you that there is something out there, something that I can vouch for. Today's 6th encounter. I won't be using my real name for privacy reasons. I will say that I'm a 15-year-old female. I'm from Nebraska. I know you're probably thinking cornfields, middle of nowhere, but that's not where I'm from. I live in Omaha, but I've always loved the outdoors. I go hunting and or hiking almost every weekend with my dad or with friends. Okay, on to the experience. I went to the Nebraska National Forest every long weekend with 2 friends who we'll call Haley and Todd. I've known them for years, and we'd never hike alone because of the risks, so we became a group. Anyway, it was spring break last year when we went on a week-long backpacking trip. It was a 7-hour drive there. I, being 14, couldn't drive, but Haley was 16, and Todd 15. Haley drove us there, and we had a great time for the first few hours of the drive. But when we got closer to the forest, something felt off. I know it sounds cliche, but I had this feeling like I was going to be sick. I ignored it and thought I was just nervous. So Haley and Todd, I guess, noticed that I was off. They asked me what was up, and when I told them something wasn't wrong, they laughed. Something wasn't right. They laughed, thinking that I was trying to scare them. A few hours later, the feeling is still there. But we were at the trailhead. I got out, and everything was as it should be. We grabbed our packs and went off. I felt like I was at home in the trees, and the feeling was soon forgotten. We walked a little over 5 miles that day before we set up camp. We had a 2-person tent that Haley and I brought, and then a hammock Todd had brought. After we set up camp, we ate. We're just chilling by the fire, talking. There was no alcohol or drugs. Todd began complaining about how he didn't want to sleep in his hammock. I didn't want to listen to him complain, and I offered to switch places. He gladly accepted. So the night went on like usual until 2 in the morning, when we all got tired and went to bed. Well, everyone but me. I had an extremely bad insomnia, so I was just mending to the fire. Finally, I decided to get into the hammock and read a bit. So I put out the fire, grabbed my headlamp, and got up into the hammock. I noticed that something was off, but I couldn't place it. That's when it hit me. It was completely silent in the woods. No crickets, animals, nothing. My skin started to crawl. Something was off. I turned out my headlamp and laid down, kept silent. I wanted to try and hear some type of animal, to ease my worries. That's when I heard it. Something was dragging against the tent. I wasn't even 5 feet from the tent. It freaked me out. And I did something really stupid. I called out my friends' names. The noise stopped. I got no answer, but this feeling of dread was something I haven't felt before or since. That's when I felt it. Something poked the hammock. It wasn't a soft poke. It was like a jab. I was horrified. What the hell had just touched me, and where the hell was it? I was frozen. I also suffered from anxiety and felt the panic rising above. I couldn't understand what was going on. That's when I made another mistake. Decided I wanted to see what had just jabbed me. All this happened within seconds. I reached up and clicked on my light. That's when I saw it. It was right out of my nightmares. There was a creature about 4 feet above me, staring at me, kind of hunched over. I was about 3 feet off the ground in the hammock. This thing was easily 7 to 8 feet tall. It looked like a dog, but it also didn't. It had a wolf-like face, but human in a way. The eyes looked red. The ears were clipped like a pit bull's. Its mouth pulled back in a snarl, and a hand-claw-paw thing blocked its face. I was terrified. Its teeth were huge, sharp. The paws, if you could even call them that hand, 5-finger type things with sharp long claws that looked like it could tear me apart. I stared at this thing for what felt like hours, but was only a few seconds. That's when I screamed bloody murder. As soon as I did that, this thing let out something between a scream and a howl. It was deep, and I could feel it. When I heard Todd yell, "What the heck was that?" I heard the tent opening up, and that's when the creature and I finally broke eye contact. I yelled at Haley and Todd to help me. I looked back up, and this thing was climbing up the friggin' tree, staring at me. That's when I saw the back of it. It had a tail of a dog, grayish, silver fur, a black mane down its back and hump. I took this opportunity to scramble out of my hammock. We took off without getting anything. I had no shoes, nothing. We made it to the car, but the whole time coming back, I had heard something in the trees. The next day, we had the park rangers go and get our things, as we were too freaked out. When they got there, everything was gone. Not even the trash remained. It was as if we were never there. They blamed us for lying. We had no idea what happened. I had no idea what I saw or why it didn't just kill me. I haven't been back in the woods for a long time, but still, every time I close my eyes, I see this thing staring back at me from the trees, and I hear its roar. And there you have it, folks, this early morning, middle of the night bonus. I do hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you, and I'd like to thank you for supporting this channel. It is your support that keeps this channel growing and going, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we all deserve, and I do appreciate it. Thank you. Stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.